This tutorial is for the E-loop cast on. It's also known as the wrap cast on or the easy loop method. It's named this because it is, as the name implies, very simple and easy to do. In order to do this cast on, you'll need your needles and your yarn for your project of choice. You'll want to leave a tail for weaving in your ends later, and begin with a slip knot. This is a very stretchy, loose cast on. It's very great for those properties, and the first knitted row is rather difficult in my opinion to do, so I'm going to talk about that at the end of this video as well. You can cast on this method using the needle in either your right or your left hand. I will show you to begin with the needle held in your right hand, as I'm right-handed and that's a little more comfortable for me, but I'll show you how to do it with the needle in your left hand as well. In order to do this cast on, once we have our slip stitch on our needle, we're going to grip the working yarn with our fingers. We're just going to leave our thumb out of the picture. You can grip it in whatever way is comfortable to you. I just grip it with the bottom 3 fingers of my hand, like I'm going to do a long tail cast on, where I'm pinching my fingers and going between the threads. Only here we have one thread, so once you've gripped the yarn with your fingers, you're going to take your thumb and you're going to hook it behind your working yarn so that you have your thread hooked around your thumb like so. And then our next step is with our needle tip. We're going to come down here underneath this thread coming around the front of our thumb. We're going to hook that up onto our needle. We're going to let our thumb slip out. You see this makes a loop on our needle, which we can then just pull tight. And there's our first stitch. It's that easy. So again, you want to grip your yarn with your fingers, take your thumb, hook it around the back of your thread like so, and then with our needle tip we're just going to come down up along our thumb, hook that thread onto our needle, let our thumb pop off of that loop, and then pull it down tight to cast on our stitches. Now you can probably see that the reason this is such a loose cast on and a loose first row is because we're just making loops onto our needle. So it's a very fast, very quick and easy way of casting on stitches, but the first row can be really tricky, and I'll show you what I mean in a moment. Now to do this cast on with the needle in our left hand, we will go ahead and swap that over. And then what we're going to do is something very similar. With our right hand now, we're going to grip our thread. We're going to, with our thumb, hook around the back of our thread so that we have a loop around our thumb like so. Then with the tip of our needle, again we're going to come down underneath our thread and up along our thumb to hook that onto our needle. That makes a loop. We can let our thumb slip out of that loop, and then we can go ahead and pull that down tight. So again, grip with your fingers, hook your thumb around from the back onto your yarn, then with your needle tip, hook underneath that loop on your thumb and pull it down tight. So it's a very easy cast on in either your left or your right hand, whatever feels most comfortable to you. Very easy to do. Now, what I was talking about before on this first row being difficult, if we go ahead and knit our first stitch, I can show you what I mean. Because these are just loops on our needle and there's no kind of structure underneath to our cast on, as we knit our first stitch, if I don't keep my needles kind of close to each other and I pull, this big gap forms between my 2 stitches here. And that's because that first cast on stitch is just essentially a loop, a twist. And as I'm pulling, I'm cinching that first stitch down. You can see that right here. So I can knit my next stitch, and you can see it kind of sort of fixes that loop between our two stitches. There's where that loop is. But again, if I pull, I now have an even longer thread between my two stitches. So as you're doing this knitted first row, it's important that you just keep your needles kind of close together so you're not overstretching that first row. Otherwise you can end up, if I'm pulling each stitch as I knit it, by the time you get to the end of your row, depending on how many stitches you can have a very big kind of ugly gap between your stitches. You see how big that is? And you get to the end and you've got this one stitch that's kind of just dangling on at the end, and that can be a little problematic. So as you're knitting, just make sure to keep your needles a little closer together. It also is very difficult to knit across if you're tense and knitting tightly, and so I wouldn't recommend this for beginner knitters. I see a lot of people recommend this as a nice beginning cast on, but I found that it drives people crazy, especially when they're already trying to deal with a bunch of new movements. But you can see there, because I was pulling each stitch really loose, I've got this kind of awful extra loop at the bottom between these last two stitches here. So something to keep in mind as you're using this cast on.